Hi, this is Shane Starr. The day is sunny, not like last time, so I feel a little more comfortable talking today. What's on my mind in typology is self-typing and typing others. And I don't know of anyone who has spent more time going down the wormhole than me. And a couple of related strands stand out that I think are important for accurately typing one's self and others. And one has to do with whether or not we can improve our bad points and using that to backwards engineer our type. And I'll give some examples in a moment. The other is simply what kind of work do you do? What kind of business do you do? Because that sort of plays into the other thing. Let me explain. So if you're typing someone and they're having trouble at work and you get what kind of business they're in, you can tell right off the bat most of the time if someone's in a particular business, it's going to exclude some certain types, and I know everyone can be everything, but if that's really the case, then what are we even doing? I don't think everyone can be everything. The whole idea of typing is to categorize people by their qualities. So if you have a bodybuilder, for instance, chances are they don't have SE polar. I mean, I'm just saying, if you're telling me they can and you want to believe that, good for you, but I can't go down that road with you. So let's say someone has an office job, for instance, and they're struggling with remembering certain protocols and procedures as they relate to systematic work. I think we can get to a couple of conclusions using that. Now, likewise, if someone has that same job and they are excelling at those things, I think that tells us something as well. So both what you do and what you're struggling with, given what you do, I think gives us a really good head start on typing people. And ultimately, for myself, that's what I have realized to exclude certain types. Just because when we think of certain qualities of people and certain professions where those qualities are necessary, one can quickly decide that another type must be a better description than maybe the one that they think they are or what others have told them they are. I keep talking without using concrete examples, but I'll give a concrete example of a coworker who I no longer work with, but she was very personable, very likable, popular, and she struggled with the data part of the job, the attention to detail, the doing things within the proper protocols and procedures. She would oftentimes find ways to get things done, but they weren't the way that the business wanted them done. And as a result, she struggled, and it weighed on her. And so, given what she was doing in a customer service and technical role as well, you could tell, well, she excels at this, but she doesn't excel at this other thing. And it also calls into question what I said earlier about can we improve? And I think the things we're good at, oftentimes we don't improve much. I mean, we can improve anything with practice, but we're not going to improve much. And I think the things in the middle are the cash value. I've said this in other videos, are role function in socionics, which is our 8th in MBTI, our suggestive function, which is the 4th in the MBTI, and our mobilizing function, which is the 3rd function in the MBTI. I really like focusing on that 3rd function for personal improvement, and I think that's where we get our most cash value. And I've said that in several other videos. But when it comes to a polar function and a suggestive function without outside assistance and coaching and constant help, like a scaffold, as it were, I think people get lost, and that's where my coworker got lost on the technical stuff, and that's why, you know, when I was thinking, is she ESFJ or maybe ESFP, I think that she, given what she showed me, I think she was TI polar. You know, given what I understand about the function, what I understand about her with working with 2 years, I could tell. That's a concrete example of typing someone using both what they do and what they struggle with and what their potential is for improvement. And I think that's a good formula. I'm not saying it's the whole thing, but I think it's sometimes overemphasized and sometimes underrated, looking at what people do for a living, you know, and I think sometimes people make the mistake of extending that to geographic regions. You know, they think if you're from LA, you must be an SE lead and an Enneagram 3. You know, it's not necessarily the case. And again, everything in typing happens in the context of the group. So when we try to categorize ourselves and each other, we can't do it in a vacuum. You have to see where you are on the spectrum of other people. Otherwise, it makes no sense. That's why you have loudmouths claiming to be introverts and basement dwellers claiming to be SE leads and stuff like that, because they don't have the context to compare and contrast themselves with other people. And I think that's important. So if you take someone who works at a brokerage firm selling stocks and bonds, and you say that to someone, they're probably going to be typed right off the bat like an ESTP, Enneagram 7 or 3 or maybe an 8, probably that exact tri-type, 3, 7, 8, and people will mostly agree with that. But then if you look in the context of that office of 30 people, now you have 30 ESTPs, 3, 7, 8s. Now you look and you start to make comparisons and contrasts, and you start to make distinctions. Wait, this guy is way over here on the introverted side of the group. This guy's like the alpha dog male of the group. And you can start typing people within that overall group. Whereas someone from overseas or someone in a different state, they'll look at anyone in that group and call those same types. But someone closer to the action with more perspective can see the nuances and say, no, out of this whole group of 30 people, there's maybe 3 or 4 ESTPs. Maybe in a group like that, there's 6 or 7 of them, but they're definitely not all going to be ESTPs, but they will all be typed that by outside people who over-rely on that factor. On the other hand, to not take what you do into account and not take those environmental factors, and especially, once again, to not take into account what is it you are struggling with, what's giving you the most pain in your life, what is it that you need other people to do instead of you. Those are the key factors that can't go ignored when we are typing ourselves or others. That's all I have for today. Have a good one, you guys. Catch me on my religion channel sometime if you're interested. If you're not, that's fine. Peace out.